You know what? It's EOS Town Hall time. This is how we get started. It's a beautiful Monday morning. It is Monday the 25th. This is our 5th Town Hall. Hopefully we can move forward with some stuff that we got going. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. Really I want to get back into moving forward with the user agreement. Kevin, last week when we left off, we talked a little bit about getting some translations done. Really this is going to be about building steam into getting one action completed. And I'm hoping that we can all kind of guide around that, try to figure out whether or not we can get things moving forward. Do you have an luck in getting anything translated this week, Kev?
We had Korean translated. There was a miscommunication between myself and our community manager in China, so it was not translated. It's being worked on now. Should be done within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any ideas? This week, once translated in Korean and ideally in Chinese, everyone here that's currently attending, is anyone opposed to the movement forward and trying to get this done? Does anyone else have any differing opinions on what that user agreement is? And does anyone not want to step forward and try to create a campaign to get that moving?
We're a bit of a choir, preaching to the choir kind of thing on this call, I think.
Yves, is that you?
Yeah, that was me. I was just going to say, I've been, likewise, I'm echoing Kevin's sentiments. We're kind of preaching to the choir here, but I've been in China now. I met with a bunch of Beijing VPs. I'm now meeting with the Shanghai VPs, and everybody so far supports it. So it's already in progress. It's already happening.
Yeah, so we want to, I guess, just come up with some action requirements, right? I mean, this ultimately we've all concluded that to move these type of things forward, even because we're not getting participation in the vote, because we're not getting out to people, because it's tough to get people to go out and participate in these systems and it's early on, and we recognize that we want to be able to move forward with signing the MSAG, making sure people the BPs, the top 21 BPs have signaled that we're going to move forward with it. The signal for that up on the referendum right now, Kev, how many people have signaled towards that?
13.8 million.
Okay.
Yep.
So
can I speak on that a little bit?
Yep.
If you add Hobby votes and you add Bitfinex votes, we have 93 million.
Okay.
Do we have a reason to add them?
No, but what I mean is we pretty much have all the votes we'll ever have. Because there's only 105 or so million right now voting.
There's 250
and Hobby
million
and
voting.
Bitfinex, is there that much right now that's voting?
There's 110 million that's voting for the top block producer for any one block producer, but there's over 240 million tokens staked and voting for a block producer, according to EOS Authority's website. Is the last time I checked.
You know what? Yves actually brings up a real good point. I mean, like the block, the votes, the parameters of voting from like Huobi and from the top exchanges. I don't ever expect them to vote on the referendum items. I don't know if that's like. Does anyone else have any opinions? I doubt the exchanges. Do we think that they're ever going to really participate in voting?
No, because it would require them to. So they pull their users right now to get the votes out. I know Bitfinex does. There's no way Bitfinex is going to get it.
Right.
So I did reach out to the exchanges, and Bitfinex never replied at the time. Hobby said that they would vote. However, the parameters making it that they have to stake for 30 days, that's not going to happen. If the requirements for staking changed and it was just a single for a day or two, they might be more open to it. In terms of voting for constitution, unlikely, so in this particular instance, but I did get a nod for Rex, for the idea of, Rex for all, which was the extra name fee and RAM fees. But in general, I think it's I don't want to say this, but it's somewhat safe to assume that they're not going to be participating in this.
What's the 30 days that you're talking about, Yves? This isn't you. When you vote on a referendum on them, you're not locked up for 30 days, are you?
Well, so if we were to really abide by what the current thresholds set in the current interim constitution say, it's a minimum of 30 days staked for the thresholds to pass, right? And so if the exchanges believe that for us to actually make a change, we would need to meet that threshold, that means they would at a minimum be locking their votes for 30 days.
30 days
I don't think they're doing that.
Tell them that we don't need to meet that threshold to make a change.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been saying, and I think they just put up for MSIG, and I think that's the idea in the end, is you put it up for MSIG, people vote for it or not.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, you know, I think what a good breakdown would be before this next weekend would just to be, or before this next week. I mean, I think we can get there. You know, we're going to need to go out and really lobby, Kevin. Maybe I'll get with you tomorrow. You know, after this, early this week after this call. I mean, I want to actually go out and communicate with some of the other BPs and just try to make sure we can get 15 or 16 of these people to signal that they will vote for, that they will go ahead and take action.
Yeah, the way that I've started to think about referendum, and you know, there's for every single block producer, this is a deeply individual decision, and the one thing that I think is constant, beside, you know, everyone's going to have a different amount of votes that they need to feel comfortable. But the constant is that it's, well, no, in the same vein, it's a certain amount of time that needs to elapse as well. And it just it being out there, it being on chain, it's like, okay, it's been there for 30 days and nobody's freaked out, or it's been there for 30 days and a lot of people support it, then we feel better. So I think part of this is just time. Definitely still want to reach out to block producers individually, which I plan to do. But yeah, it's the translations, it's time, it's, you know, it's a lot of moving parts, and none of it is explicit. That's the thing.
So I've spoken to 2 people in the top 21 that have said explicitly that what you just mentioned, which is the signal for 30 days, leave it up for 30 days. If after 30 days the community has not spoken loud enough, the block producers do the MSIG, and it's up to the block.
I have someone at my door. I'm listening, but I'll be right back.
Cool. Yeah.
Another thought that I have with this keeps coming back to voter engagement.
21.
We're at 25% voter engagement right now. I'm just looking at it, 266 million tokens. If you take the 13.8 million that have voted, that's 20% of the active voters. If you were to remove, like we talked about, 100-something million tied up in you know, exchanges or whatever it ends up being, that bumps that number up even higher. So we start to get a pretty clear consensus by the active members of EOS. And I've been tweeting about this, I've been blogging about it. You know, a lot of people have been actively saying, what do we do to get more active token, you know, holder investment involved? And if the answer is simply, there's nothing we can do, that if that's the actual reality we find ourselves in, because I've seen that number at 25% not budge for months. And so it's like, and so, but part of this also relates to, like, we tried to do a tutorial for doing air gapped offline signing of transactions with the EOS voter, and we actually found a little bit of a bug. You couldn't handle JSON, for example. So we couldn't actually vote for custodians in the eosDAC based on that tooling. So maybe there's still some concerns about, you know, offline air gap signing of transactions. Maybe we need more training and tutorials about that. Whatever we can do to get that 75% moving, you know, and engaged in the community, I think is really, really important if we want to actually have a system that's functional. But ultimately, we have to face reality. We can't just stick our head in the sand and be like, eventually those 75%, they're coming tomorrow. You know, it's like, if it doesn't happen, it's never going to happen. If it's never going to happen, that may be the reality we find ourselves in. So it might just be a matter of saying, look, we expected a certain thing prior to mainnet launch. We set these criteria up. We all agree that they weren't very, you know, backed on any kind of empirical evidence. It was just kind of a wet finger in the air to see what would happen. And ultimately, we find ourselves here with 20%, if you remove exchanges, you know, maybe 40%, whatever it is, of active people supporting a certain direction. You know, and I agree, time is one of those things where it's like, You know, if you hadn't made your voice known by now, then will you ever? And so I think that, you know, we just have to look at reality, where we actually are, look at who the actual EOS token holders are that are active as part of the community, and then make decisions based on their signaling of the, you know, polls and referendums. And I think that until we put something up as multi-sig for the BPs, then ultimately, you know, nothing changes. So I actually like, as a great example, and we could talk about this too, it might be fun, is that there's a whole bunch of proposals to null out some keys for the blacklists, you know, but now that that's actually a multi-sig that block producers could take action on, the conversation, I mean, if you watched through the whole weekend, it was just fast and furious, because now there's actual action people can take. So I think ultimately, if we want to move things forward, put it up as MSIG, and then see which BPs start approving and supporting it.
Yeah, no, I am completely aligned with you there, Luke. And the idea, I think, behind this was, you know, let's take this first action, and just so we have that as a clear movement forward to where we're actually getting something done. You know, Kevin, I'll follow up with you on Wednesday and really start making an attack and trying to communicate with the other, you know, active BPs. To try to make sure that we get a kind of a list of, you know, messaging continues to go out. I'd love to see the possibility by next week that we have 15 of the top 21 BPs that will signal yes towards this. And then, you know, ideally we could all put out messaging in all of our social media channels saying, listen, this is time has come to move forward with something. We're taking action as the BPs that are responsible for the chain. Potentially by next week, we could all start to look at what moving forward looks like.
Yeah, I think we need to be cognizant also of what the current climate is in EOS right now. And to be honest, there's a couple of things that are top of mind for everybody, and this isn't it. So it may just be waiting for, I don't know, a resolution for that stuff before anyone is willing to dedicate cycles to this.
I mean, you know, I think the number one thing on my mind in this chain is whether or not we're getting anything done. You know, I think that we haven't stepped forward to get anything done, and kind of the cherry pick of what this item was because it's truly doesn't radically affect. There's only a few things that it affects. It's not something that's on chain that's massively going to be impactful, but it does signal that BPs are willing to actually create changes in the network, and then you know, have the users that are voting vote for them based upon that action, which I think is the right thing to move, you know, to go forward with. I mean, I think some of the other things that are affecting this chain are, you know, are going to take much longer to untangle. But if we ultimately start, you know, moving things forward and we demonstrate that we can get action done, then maybe people will start taking the referendum items a little bit more seriously, because they'll notice that, you know, if they don't vote or if they don't push forward their thoughts, that the elected block producers will, and then they can decide whether or not they're voting for or against them. I mean, I don't know what else is going to be, you know, come ahead of that thought right now.
I'm just going down the list right now and sending a message to the block producers whose Telegram handles I know.
Cool. You know, I think go ahead.
One thing, this is my first time here, but I've been watching the past shows, the past town halls, and we've been discussing internally what to do regarding this. And right now, what I can think of is that we are trying to come up with a process for decision making. I mean, we as BPs and being in the 21, we want to be engineers in the sense that we want to operate the network and maintain it. And we are not certainly the delegates in a liquid democracy. I mean, we are the executive branch, but I would say that the delegates is also the proxies, because they are voting on behalf of people. And it would also be great to have the signaling from proxies that they support this. And maybe we should ask proxies to speak their mind And we as EOSRIO, we are thinking more something in the way that, okay, we will sign for a petition that have more yes than no's and have this threshold, and make this public to say, okay, this is our process and this is our threshold. And I think that BPs will converge in that, because I don't want to have, and I don't think that I'm capable of actually doing the decision in the name of all the voters that vote for EOSRIO. I think that Luke is way more capable of doing that. He's running a proxy. He's saying to people, okay, I'll choose for you. I can do this. So what we are trying to do here actually is to come to a conclusion of, and this won't be perfect at first, but saying, okay, if this proposal get this amount of votes, we'll sign for it. If it gets 15%, we can propose the multi-sig. And we are trying to arrive to that conclusion and say, okay, we want to be in that political sense, we are executors of these things, and we are good engineers in running the chain. And we probably don't want to mix both things, because we'll end up having a not so good engineer and a not so good representative for people's interest. And if you maybe get these things apart, it's easier for people. You choose your proxy according to what you think and what you believe, and you trust that person to make the choice for you, and you choose your BP because they can operate the network. And we are really thinking about this, and maybe just in the actions, getting other proxies to vote, it will be great, because you're signing BPs that people that are trusted by the community to vote for them are voting for the proposal or something like that.
If I could comment.
Go ahead, Luke.
Oh yeah, if I could comment on that, I think that's a great perspective. But I would also say, and I've got a little experience with DPoS, having been a Steam witness and EOS, a block producer. I think delegated proof of stake is a lot of an and, right? It's not an or, right? So I think what you said is beautiful, and I think it's really important that proxies do get engaged and vote. And I'm just looking at the heat map right now, eostitan.com/heatmap. Click over to the proxies radio button, and you can see a whole lot of green for Rex for All, decaf, and the EOS agreement, user agreement. Now we could get a little more action on the EOS user agreement, and we could go down this list and actually list out the people who have not voted and definitely reach out to them. So I'm fully in agreement to that. I think definitely the proxies are an important voice to the block producers, absolutely. And at the same time, I'm gonna make an argument that for delegated proof of stake to work, you're not just electing technically excellent engineers. It does require more than that. And that's what makes, I think, DPoS such a beautiful system. Unlike, a proof of work, you just run a mining rig, and, you could be this terrible scumbag person, whatever. And it's just like people just, you get to do however much money you have, you get to influence the network, and that's it. With delegated proof of stake, your reputation, your trustworthiness, your identity, everything rolls into that mechanism of being trusted by the community as a block producer. That can certainly be delegated to the proxies to learn who those people are. But I often make this argument, both on Steam and on EOS, that if a technically excellent team doesn't also have a Kevin Rose, then they're not going to be as successful. Like, Kevin is phenomenal at engaging with the community, dealing with the politics. I mean, we hear this all the time, but the joke is like, delegated proof of stake is Game of Thrones. I mean, really, it's this crazy warring faction of people, but at the same time, we're all cooperating, which is beautiful and awesome. So I think that, I think we need an and. I think we definitely need the proxies to signal to the block producers, but my encouragement would be for the block producers as well to recognize this responsibility as part of delegated proof of stake. And again, this is just one person's interpretation of what DPoS means, but I've been involved in it for a couple of years now, and I've seen what works for people. And it's not just being technically excellent. That is incredibly important. That is as a proxy, it's my #1 thing that I use to choose my people who I vote for. But at the same time, I want to see people who have a trusted reputation, who care about the community, who aren't just trying to extract value from themselves, pull as much of the inflation rewards down for themselves as they can, but are actually thinking about investing value in the network. So I think it's a combination of the block producer signaling, here's what we believe, because that's also a signal that the proxies need, and that's why I would encourage these BPs. And we've actually built into eosDAC now, we have a voice permission that only requires, I think, 7 of 12 out of our custodians. So now, and we've already voted for 2 as a block producer, because we, based on the last town hall call we had, we're like, yeah, block producers need to signal also. So we put this into our systems to make sure that our community could actually on chain. And the funny thing is the eosDAC account doesn't have any funds. Like, we always move the funds out of eosDAC server to a multi-sig account controlled by custodians. So even though that vote is useless as far as the actual moving the ball forward, and that's actually a good point. I just thought about it. Our holding account should actually match the votes of that account. But anyway, these are interesting things to think about, is that the block producers can signal to the proxies what they believe and what their intentions are.
Yeah. No, yeah. I completely agree with you there, Luke. I mean, I definitely think it's part of our responsibility, not only to be engineering profound, but also making sure that we signal to the community what our thoughts are on these things. That's part of it. You know, in the inclusion here, trying to get people to talk, you know, a lot of it is about proxy awareness and making sure that the proxies understand who we are and what our intentions are. So, you know, just sitting there saying that we just have to be technically proficient and wait for people to vote, I think isn't enough right now. Making sure that we, you know, it's knowing what our intentions are is a part of this game in DPoS. So, you know, David Peckham's here. David, you know, you've spouted and started one of the top proxies in the system so far. If you're around and you want to comment, let us know.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very much aligned, I think, with Luke on this in terms of the role that we need both the community, BPs, and proxies respectively to play in all of this. I'm very much developing my own thinking on an ongoing weekly basis, and it is continuously developing and changing in response to the needs, really, ultimately, of the network in this regard. So whereas you could have gone back about 6 months and I was of the opinion that BP should be trying to stay very politically neutral, I think now that leadership element needs to be clearly shown on an ongoing basis from as many as possible, because that is how we can assist the community in that reaching of consensus, and that is reflected also in the proxy votes and the ongoing votes of other token holders as to whether or not we're getting things right or wrong. So I do fully agree with all of that, and I also agree with Kevin's sentiments with regards to when we think it is actually potentially acceptable to define when we think a given referenda can be potentially proposed for implementation as well. So I haven't really got a lot else to add. You know, you've been making some very good points throughout, and I've just been listening and nodding my head to a large extent. I think, you know, the network has been through a fairly troubling week, and I would like to personally see us work out a way to close the door on this and start to move forwards positively. And I think the user agreement is probably the single biggest thing that we can do for that in the long term.
Okay, well, you know, I think this week, if we can all reach out and again make sure that the proxies that we all know of and the other VPs that we all know of are aware that this is something that we're trying to move as an initiative. Making sure that I touch back base with you, Kevin. I'll touch base on Wednesday and try to see if I can help. You know, we can't help you, but I think this is everyone on this that cares to participate. If we can all get in help. Kind of push things forward, maybe get more of a signal, but ultimately show our allegiance here on wanting to move something forward. I think is what's important. You know, it's been a good amount of time. Let's see whether or not how much more time it's going to take for us to actually get some action done. I will mention that the thing that over the last 2 weeks that I am most excited about and seeing what kicked up is the voter proxy reward bounty. And I think that was something that you pushed forward, David. But that was, it's gotten a lot of action done amongst the circles that I know for engineering, and trying to move things forward. I mean, as everyone on this call is pretty familiar with, there are 2 action items that covers that, you know, I think are very important to the success and survivability of this chain. One, the full history nodes and being able to make sure that we have a solution that where we can actually run full history for the network in in a manner in which it's not going to exhaust all the resources of anyone who tries to run full history. So that's something that because of the voter bounty rewards, our team has moved forward with the submission of a proposal. I know EOSRIO is moving forward with a submission of a proposal, and that's how you get action done. And that was something that I really like to see in that. And so, gathering the proxies together to be able to signal votes and that vote power, I think is in lieu of a worker proposal system and that action being actually taken. I'd just like to thank the team that was behind that voter bounty proposal, because it's definitely spurred a lot of action. We've got a submission on the way for the backup BP testing as well that Kedar sitting here with me. Have we published that yet? So we just haven't published it, but that's how you get action done. And that's, ideally a way that the community will see that the engineering does respond to appreciation from voting. And I'm a big believer in the worker proposal system and what ultimately that will or can help out with for engineering. I mean, engineering, needs incentive, and that just is what it is sometimes. So, I wanted just to thank you guys, David, and everybody else who's behind that proxy reward platform. I hope that continues. I hope you guys build that out further, and we can get some other good initiatives done throughout there. Now, I'm just going to leave this open to forum right now. If anyone else has any thoughts or comments about what all we can be helping with the rest of this week.
I just have one comment. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to mention, we're talking about full history, and it's been an ongoing kind of like elephant in the room for the whole community, because it was a deprecated plugin that was deprecated for a reason, because it's not really designed to. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we change subjects, can I tie the last one off with one quick thing? Thank you. I've reached out to every single block producer, except a few. I would like to solicit the help of anyone on this call, contacting them. I'll share a list, but basically, Huobi, Start EOS, ZB, EOS Beijing, Hello EOS. That's it. I have not reached out to them directly, and I would like to, just to ask if we can, if they would vote on it or not, and to get their opinion. And I also posted to the block producer channel, asking people to either respond within the channel or to indicate their approval or dissent on the referendum, however it may fall. So just so that we can get a clear signal on where the collective is. And just to stress, we're not going to propose it at this time. We very much recognize that more time needs to elapse before a proposal is put on chain for the block producers to sign regarding this very sensitive, very nuanced and complex subject. So any help reaching out to those four would be very appreciated, and we can connect after the call if anyone would like to volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I can just deal with it now if you really want to. You've got a yes from Beijing. I'm meeting Huobi in 2 days. I'm meeting ZB in 3 days, and I'm meeting Start EOS and Hello EOS on March 4th.
Awesome. I figured you would be the first to speak up. Thank you. I look forward to the result of your conversations.
That is fantastic. Related to that, I know we have the EOS proxy channel. Is there a easy mechanism for us to do what you just did for the proxies? Because I noticed that I'd like to see more green there on the proxies side as well. Like, do we have contact information for all the proxies? Is this a database worth putting out there? I know, like Freedom Proxy, for example, they got an entire website, same with Brock Pierce's proxy. And I've thought about that too. Maybe I should have a website, but just a way that, people can contact these proxies in an easy mechanism. Say, hey, can you tell us if you're going to vote yes or no? I need to know.
I think the EOS proxy channel and Telegram would be the fastest way to connect with all of them. And then also the constructive voting infrastructure, or collect, whatever the acronym is, the thing where all the proxies are pooling votes and voting for people who can develop bounty projects. That would be also the best way, in my opinion, at least for the English speaking proxies. And some of Chinese-speaking proxies, but so not all of them. That's my suggestion.
You've got
there's also on Aloha, the Aloha proxy page, most of the registered proxies have a Telegram contact associated with them directly on the proxy page.
Excellent. Yes, I forgot about that. That's there too. Cool.
we've got David Peckham here, who's I think one of the guys who led forward the voting bounty program. So David, I'm not sure what we need to do to make sure that you've collectively led that group in helping in that decision. I'm not sure if you'd have anything to contribute on the best way to contact those on that list.
I mean, I really should say, actually, this has primarily been Ryan Betham that's led this out through, and he is definitely going to be the best contact point for this, because I believe he's working with the large number of different proxies on this. So it's very much working in tandem with all the proxies who are very much independently assessing this on an ongoing basis.
So Kevin, that was Ryan Betham. If you missed that, I don't know if you have his Telegram or want me to send it over to you, but he's been the one coordinating that voter bounty.
Yep, I'm aware of his involvement. I'll reach out to him directly. Thank you.
Awesome. Luke, you had a thought on full history plugin.
Yeah. Actually, this kind of relates to some work Michael Yates has been doing. Actually played with it just yesterday. He put out something on GitHub, so immediately I jumped on it and started playing with it. It's accurately called the fire hose, and it's essentially, I don't know if it's publicly ready for discussion, but essentially it uses a state history plugin in a way that you can set up a WebSocket to just get exact real-time information exactly based on what you want. And I think this is the direction that applications are going to move. This is direction that I would like to see most systems move, because I think it's just a solid, robust solution. Again, he's still tweaking some things to make sure you can get all the traces and all the actions correctly. But I'm just watching it work. I mean, just pulling up an index HTML file, static file that has a little JavaScript that's just hitting, one of these nodes that's just running. It's beautiful. It's so amazing to see it real time, block by block by block, to see all this data coming in. And I think that will be a great solution moving forward. I think to some degree, the full history discussion is a little bit of a red herring, because again, it's a deprecated plugin. It's really not designed to handle what this network has become. It never really was. And so what I'm hoping is that we're going to put out these other solutions, such as the state history plugin with a nice API and a nice mechanism for scraping that WebSocket data, and then basically come to like a consensus as an organization, as a group, as a people, to say, let's not be wasting all these resources of the network to support these mechanisms that, again, are deprecated. And so I would hope that hopefully that's going to be a much more difficult conversation, but I hope to get some support on that once we get these other solutions available and we train people how to use them, and we demonstrate how they're so much better than what we're trying to do with the history plugin, that hopefully that becomes a mechanism that move forward. Now, again, some full, block explorers and things like that need complete history, and how they manage that. There's a bunch of different examples with Elasticache, with what EOS Canada is doing. Obviously, there's always going to be solutions for that. But I think the key message I'd like to see within this network is that applications themselves don't need to rely on those full history nodes and scrape them every 30 seconds or 20 seconds or 10 seconds. It's just completely inefficient. It's not a good technical solution. Whereas a WebSocket solution, where you just filter for the exact account, for the exact actions you want to run your application, it's just orders of magnitude more efficient, more effective, and it's just technically a much, much better solution. So I think that we can lead the way as a group of technical block producers to say, hey, this is the direction we're moving as a network. When we talk about full history nodes not being available, it's because it's a bad solution technically, right? So I want to hopefully shift the narrative of like, oh man, EOS, what a joke, they can't even run full nodes, and more so be like, no, we're a distributed computing platform, and we're going to use the right technology for the job, right? So we'll keep you guys posted. I think that's something that is worth discussing as soon as the solutions are available, because I just don't see full history as being something we can support, even now.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have a number of solutions that are going to be proposed based off this voter bounty that's been done. I mean, we ourselves have a very elegant solution that we think is very scalable, extremely scalable. So that's one that we're excited, and we're going to try to get the notice about out during this week, and people can start talking about it. I spoke with the Rio team and Igor and understand their solution, which is also an interesting solution. So looking forward really to seeing, what that, there'll be many. There'll be hopefully 3 or 4 that we're going to be looking over. And then it's going to be a question of, how are we going to take action on in deciding which one of these solutions is the right way to go forward with? Because there'll be some benefits and negatives about some of the decisions that we kind of make, and some cost-related parameters on how people are going to run these things as they go forward. But hopefully we'll just continue to be transparent with the community about the positives, negatives of these different solutions that we're proposing. But it looks like we do have obviously a number of apps engineering teams and squads rounding up the ideas that they have, and hopefully we can continue to have more open forums and discuss them, rather than it being a dire issue here about the DAPSOG impending failure, because I just don't think that's the case. And I do appreciate the 5 block producers right now that are supporting the full history. This 80-20 problem of data they're solving for the 20% that still needs and still have been using a lot of the things that need the full history. So definitely appreciate that. That video, if anyone here has not watched it, was it Don't Go Chasing White Rabbits?
EOS Weekly.
EOS Weekly. That was a fantastic video. So thank you to EOS Weekly for putting that together. That was just a fantastic community-driven announcement, and that alerts a lot of people and gathers a lot of steam towards a solution. So that's appreciated. Anyone else have anything that they want to talk about before we cut out here?
I've got a last comment.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on the history thing. So a couple of things there. One, in terms of the 5 block producers that are running different versions of history, there are more block producers that are running different versions of full history. Yeah. And so I think it's worth a mention, because I don't think it's fair for them not to be recognized. So if we're including paid solutions, seeing as we're including Diffuse, EOS Asia also has a paid solution. And they're running a full history. If we're including a MongoDB solution, such as what EO is running, Rio is running, then Oracle Chain is running a full history MongoDB solution as well. And those are just the ones that I met in the last 3 days. There are other block producers in China that are running full history nodes as well. So to put all of the weight of the shoulders on the Western DPs and to say that the Chinese are not running full history is not accurate. And I don't think it's doing the network a benefit by doing that. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention is I think that the initiative that Ryan and EOS 42 are doing is really, really good. And one of the things, though, that I've spoken with Ryan with is that the balance is going to be very important. So because we've put a lot of votes, I think it's up to 29 million or so of bounties that they're going for future solutions, we see, and even on this call, we've seen that there are multiple teams working on solutions, which I think is great. It's absolutely wonderful. It means that most likely in the end we'll be able to have a really good solution, because multiple teams will come up with different variations of what they think should be the new standard. They'll compete against one another. We're going to potentially even morph and make hybrids between solutions in order to come up with something great. The problem with that is that in the meantime, realistically, because so many teams are participating in this, it means most likely, realistically, we're sticking with the same native current solutions for the next half year, potentially even more. That means that more of the pressure is going on current solutions. So us at EOS Nation, we decided to run a full history node, and we've been doing the replay now for a little bit in order to catch up. I really want to bring in and mention that the balance is super important. If we put too much emphasis on the future solution, it's only going to keep putting more pressure until that solution is decided on what currently exists right now.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. We same position here. We had been running one. We deprecated it. We're bringing it back, so we're going to be supporting that as well. That should be within the next week or two. That we're caught up. as well. I mean, Kedar you wanted to mention something, Kedar?
Yeah, I think we're a lot closer to solving the full history problem than it seems public facing. We've got a bunch of technical VPs working on all of the full history stuff, and there's a bunch of solutions out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we're not going to solve it. What I'm saying is you're going to solve it. 42 is going to solve it. New York's going to solve it. You're going to have all these different people solving it, and then the issue is going to be, all right, which one do we use as the standard? That discussion is going to take time before we figure out which one is going to be the standard. A lot of time is going to pass. In the meantime, we're going to be using the current solutions. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I don't think we even
this is interesting. We've been discussing kind of history API version 2 so that we all can offer the service, but dApps can have the same call for everyone. Like we should try to keep a pattern there and offer different solutions so that dApps can switch from one to another instead of putting these different patterns. Igor's been discussing with Michael this. I don't know if there is anyone else involved, but probably there is. Maybe we should think about coordinating this. I think it's good to have different solutions because you get more resilient there, and people are offering, and this is kind of competitive in a way to get votes as well. I think this is the way we should do the worker proposal fund, is funding BPs that do stuff for the network. But I think that we can have this base layer where people try different solutions. We are trying Elastic, people are doing Mongo and all these different solutions, but we have the same kind of history API that can connect to everyone.
One thing I think
is part of the problem right now, though, is that all of the history solutions do not return the same data.
Yeah,
that is an issue.
I was just going to say that I think it's important that we, and maybe we could do this week, maybe that could be an action item for this meeting, is propose a change to the BP JSON standard that we've all kind of adopted as block producers to include, and I saw someone mention this, to include some type of versioning format for when they say, we have a queryable full history node, okay, an API node, what does that mean? And so specifying and hopefully we can have some place where you give a state history plugin or some kind of specification to say, here's what we're doing and here's where you can go to as a developer to get information about that. And then it's just a matter of querying all the different BP JSONs, correlating the data and say, look, there's 20 BPs that are running this, there's 10 BPs running this, there's 5 BPs running this. And then as a developer, I can just pick and choose and say, well, this one clearly has the most support. This is the format I'm going to use as long as it's promised to be supported going forward. And I think as a developer, that's what I'd want to see, as opposed to just this kind of, here's an endpoint. You don't really know what you're going to get from it.
Deal with it,
right? Like deal with it, and that's not a good user experience.
So we added that to the BP validator this last week, Luke.
Excellent.
So the EOS Nation BP validator now has a 5th mark, which is not a check because I personally do not believe that everybody should be running a history node. I'm not in that camp. I think that that's an extra service. I think it's great. I think more people should do it, but I don't think it should be mandatory. So it's not a check mark like the other things. It's an added bonus thing, but it will tell you which type of history that you're running, exactly like you mentioned it, and it's already running. It's already done.
Perfect.
Cool. Kedar, any final thoughts?
No.
Okay, sounds good. Well, it's come to that time again. I think hopefully we'll get this out. People will continue to kind of build up steam in conversations. I appreciate all of you that have joined today. Looking forward this week to wrapping up some thoughts around user agreement there with Kevin. And everybody else, appreciate you joining the call. And look forward to seeing all of you guys again next week. And hopefully we can continue to get some action done on this network. Everybody, appreciate it. Have a great week. Talk to you guys soon.